Hey guys, it's Fidget here. Just wanted to go over two trades I took today, both being on AMD, trading the trend, and playing around this pre-market level. So I'll go ahead and start off by marking my entries and exits. So my first entry on AMD 84 puts would have been at 710.01, which would have been right when this candle closed here. Yep, 710. My first exit was 733.28. 33 must have been somewhere in here. We'll say this wick area. And then that was the first trim. Runners got stopped at 9:11:45. We'll go ahead and mark that. And then we found another entry at 9:45:18, which would have been right here. Bearish engulfing. And then first trim at 10:34. Sorry, 10 and then 34 seconds. Right there. Okay, so now we have our levels, our entries and exits marked based on my notepad, seeing where I was. I'll go ahead and kind of describe why I got in these specific trades at these specific points. So looking at the Qs, which is our NASDAQ here, I can switch over to NASDAQ if you guys want. I'm looking at two key things when we opened up in this market. Of course, if we go to the 4-hour, we can see a straight shot making a new low. Obviously, breaking a new low, it lets me know buyers are not here at the moment. It doesn't mean they won't step in and try and push us back, but with that knowledge, I'm watching for two things. We're breaking lows. A lot of the time, I'm watching for a retest just because that is potential support. I'd like to see it get bought up, which generally happens, and then I want to see it test a specific level. So today, coming into pre-market, taking a look at the hourly, which is what I did before I went and found a trade on AMD, I saw this specific level here. So I highlight this, and we see a bearish engulfing pre-market, right? So at that point, that is the only technical level given to me after this new low, or right above this new low, right? So seeing that, I'm expecting, this bearish engulfing. It tells me two things, right? Well, it tells me one thing. Sellers stepped in, and then it gives me a technical level to kind of know that is key. I'll go ahead and mark it, this white level here. So after that, we can see in pre-market, it came up, tested that level, rejected, and couldn't close over it again. And then we see into open, a push way above that level. But where does the candle close? It closes back under that 11,538 level. That came from our pre-market 1-hour bearish engulfing candle. So I started using that as my structure. And then looking at that, the candle closed at 7. We got this candle here, the one that I mentioned tested higher and closed. So we got our slight bounce. And then I went ahead and started looking for shorts in the market, because if we look on lower time frames, go ahead and look at Qs. We can see that we are near pre-market lows. And if I zoom to the 5-minute, I noticed a descending triangle forming here, right at this 279.66 level. So one bounce, 2, 3, and then we had an inverse hammer that gave us that flush down. Things to note for me was I saw lower highs coming in, and I saw, bearish engulfings closing on the 5-minute, and then an inverse hammer, inverse. I believe the 15 had candle 2. Maybe it was a 30. Okay, yeah, I think the 30, when it first closed, it closed that inverse hammer, and then the hourly obviously tested that level we had mentioned before and rejected, so that was key for me. So after seeing that on NASDAQ and seeing that pre-market on NASDAQ and knowing what levels I wanted to focus on, I went ahead and saw this descending triangle forming pre-market. So a bunch of other stocks had already fallen, but Q's was somehow standing up a little bit, not touching its 278.94 pre-market low. So I wanted to see that one get tested here. But around, I think it was, yeah, around 7:10, exactly when. So we had this bearish engulfing on the 5, letting me know once again, hey, I kind of like to trade off of this descending triangle and the specific price level here, which would have been where our bearish engulfing closed after we had tested up here. So I went ahead and focused on that level, pretty key. And seeing this on the Qs and Nasdaq made me look to my other tickers that are being held in that index. So I saw this, and then I went ahead and saw Apple. I believe Apple was flushing, and AMD was giving decently bearish signals too. First, we have this bearish engulfing on the 5, followed by another bearish engulfing with a lower high, pretty obvious to see here, and then a move down to this pre-market low where I want to trade at, so 89.95. So what happened here was we broke under with that candle here, but like I've mentioned previously in other videos, I like to trade a retest, and I waited for this one mainly because the Qs were not under its pre-market low, right? So at 7, it took around 7:20 for them to close there. This is 7:05. This is 6:55. So when we first made that low around 6:55 or 7 to close the hourly under, I liked the way the hourly closed, right? Bearish engulfing wick to the previous pre-market range, but I didn't have that confluence with the Qs yet, so I kind of waited for that retest. Go ahead and remove those. So once we had that retest, we tested, and to me, that candle right there at 7:05 that closed at 7 or 7:05 was not too bearish to me yet. I wanted to see, okay, maybe maybe we need to hold under here on the 15 or the 30. So I started waiting a few minutes. Right after that, around I think when this tested that level and came back and made that inverse hammer, we go ahead and look at the Qs, and we see the Qs were right at the bottom of that 279.66 descending triangle here with that structure. Let me make that yellow so it's easier to see. And it closed an inverse hammer right there, with 279.66 and the clear structure for me, which a breakout, I'd stop. But this hammer gave me enough confidence to go ahead and take this AMD trade. At this point in time, it made me think, okay, AMD is going to lead the Qs down. It won't be vice versa. So I'm watching to see the weakness in AMD fall over to the Qs. So I took that entry here at 7:10.01 for exactly on the 84 puts on AMD for $131 per contract. Lining up with the Qs with that bearish engulfing hammer. Shortly after the entry, we can see that the Qs flushed down and broke that pre-market level, and we can see that AMD flushed down and pushed and made a new low on the day. My first trim was at 733.28 exactly, from 131 to 160 for about a 20% gain. After having that entry here, or that exit here, that first exit here from our entry, I went ahead and put a stop at entry. We can see I thought the market was going to come down a little bit more, but unfortunately it didn't, or at this point in time during my trade. So I put that stop at my entry, making sure I don't give back any profits. So I went ahead and put my stop at 131. There's two decisions to make there. It was a stop at entry or a stop in profits. And for me, I wanted to see if I could catch a runner, which unfortunately I did not, because it came and stopped me out around exactly 9:11:45, which this candle here I think touched VWAP, right here, and stopped me out after I got hit with a little bit of theta and IV decrease because we chopped. So I got stopped back at entry at 131. So in total, we only had a first trim to secure some profits, and then after that, the rest of the contracts went back to break even. So overall, we made a small 20% on this trade. But to me, this is a win no matter what. You're looking to make a profit when you trade, and if you make a profit, it's a win. So things I want to clarify here was when I got in that trade, delete these levels now, my stop loss would have been a close over here, over a pre-market high, and then if it instantly got flipped back with some type of candle that I felt I could wait out on the 15, I probably would have, moved my stop up to 90.61, which is the top of that little inverse hammer thing. That's why I marked that whole box. So stop being there, and my profit targets were, let's see, I believe they were down at 88, and I want to say 86.40s, but clearly we never got down to 86.40s, and that was me, you know, being a little ornery and expecting a 12% red day or whatever it would have led to on AMD, which of course didn't happen. But nonetheless, that was a stop on here, and the profit targets were here, and then 86.4, which would have been down there. So now that we've got that first entry out of the way, I want to show you guys how I traded this. After my runners got stopped, I found another entry. So the main thing to note here is that I watched AMD rip back over pre-market highs or pre-market lows, and we saw the Qs also rip back over pre-market lows, which is this blue level and this blue level here. Seeing that was a little confusing for me, but it led me to go back and look at my longer time frames and see, where hourly closes were. And if we take a look at the Nasdaq, we'll see that this candle came up, tested our 11,584, which was our level given to us pre-market, and rejected right away. When I saw that instant rejection, I went ahead and took advantage of that. We'll see that here. Right when I saw that rejection at our key level on the Qs, which was here, I went ahead and took another entry on those same AMD contracts at exactly 9:45.18. So right here in this first gray box, with a stop loss on a close back over 90.31. So my stop would have been around here. Seeing that bearish engulfing on the Qs and AMD line up, made me comfortable to take this trade with a stop this tight. So I went ahead and took my entry here with a stop at these level at this 90.86 or a close over 90.40 level, with the profit target kind of back aiming towards the low of days, or that first target I exited at near 88. So after my entry, we can see the market quickly moved back down and rejected from that pre-market level I noted on Nasdaq. We got our move down, and I exited sorry, I don't know if I mentioned, when I entered this at 9:45.18, about the 84 puts at $112 for our re-entry here. And then I took my first trim at 10:34, so 10 exactly, with 34 seconds into that candle. I trimmed from 112 to 147, for another like 20% gain. And then at that point, I set stops. I adjusted my stops on the rest of my position to my entry, which was up here around 90, or that pre-market level. And we can see that the market came up and then trended all the way down. The contracts ended up going near 200 or 210 when they were down here making that low a day. Unfortunately, I was at work, so I wasn't able to manage my runners, and I ended up having to swing this thing because I checked my phone around 4:05 and realized, hey, like I have runners still on AMD. So I was unable to trim those, so we'll see what happens for those tomorrow. But we can see, I took my one entry here, took my exit there, got stopped here, found a re-entry, traded it off the same exact level on AMD. I traded the same exact level, and then once again, when I found my entries and pivot points on AMD, they lined up with Qs at the same exact levels given to us in pre-market that I told you guys about. So you don't need to change stuff up all the time. It's good to keep things pretty simple. Like my trading plan here was simple: pre-market level, seeing rejections or breakouts there, played it twice, and having that stop at entry, not trying to hold on to this, allowed me to reposition and have an even better trade than the first one. So that's something to take note of. And that's basically it for today. Hopefully this runner ends up coming back, coming down even closer to 86.40. But if not, that's just a lesson. I need to be more cautious. I'm going to leave a runner. I need to be, you need to understand and know that I, need to remember I have it, even if I'm at work, because that could happen to me or happen to anybody. You don't want to just give away money. But nonetheless, entry, exit, stopped, entry, trim, and then still in the runner here. So hope you guys were able to learn something here. I try and line up AMD and QQQ and show you my exact entry, my exact exit, my exact stops, and my trade plan, so you guys can kind of understand how I'm putting these together and why I'm looking at the NASDAQ so heavy, because the NASDAQ gives me key guidance to trade AMD, Apple, SPY, etc. So I hope you guys learned through some of that transparency and some of these points that I mentioned here. I hope you guys have a good night. I appreciate all the feedback, so just let me know.